Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank, coming to you virtually from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, and again today from Canada. If you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here is the podcast for you. This is where we say street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host north of the border is my favorite Canadian, or one of my favorite Canadians. I better be careful. One of my favorite Canadians, Phil Simchich. Welcome, Phil. Our guest today is best-selling author and leadership coach, Greg Giuliano. Dr. Greg Giuliano is an advisor and executive coach to senior executives and teams all over the world, designing change, leadership, and team development strategies to lead organizational transformation. His stated mission is to help leaders and teams grow their capacity to enable positive disruption for markets, organizations, teams, and individuals. Greg is the author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Ultra Leadership: Go Beyond Usual and Ordinary to Engage Others and Lead Real Change, and The Hero's Journey Toward a More Authentic Leadership. We're looking forward to talking to him about that. Greg, welcome to the show. We'll be with you in just a few minutes. Everybody, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher. Of course, we're on YouTube. I like to say we are ubiquitous. We come to you from a whole bunch of different cities. Atlanta is what I like to lovingly term our mothership. But we have Boca Raton and Boston and Charleston and Knoxville and Columbus and a whole bunch of great places. Now, listen, before we bring on Greg, Phil and I need to chat. Hello there, Phil.
Hello there, Dan.
How are things in the Great White North? It's probably pretty warm in the Great White North.
Yeah, we're still enjoying summer weather. It's hanging on for its second month, 1 month beyond tradition. So we're all happy about that.
So we have some nice weather down here. And last week, I got to enjoy it on the golf course. Although didn't have my clubs with me, I was out at Chambers Bay Golf Course near Tacoma. It was the United States Women's Amateur, big deal, at the United States Women's Amateur Golf Tournament. And I volunteered, first time I've ever volunteered for a golf tournament. And I just had a blast. And it was an interesting thing came up, Phil, that made me think about from a business perspective. A lot of the young ladies there were either still in high school or in college. A lot of 18 through 22-year-olds. Some of them, I all had caddies. Some of them brought their dads. One I brought her mom. And some had their brothers on the bag. But many of them, including the winner, many of them had engaged local caddies. And Chambers Bay, I mean, for those folks who may have seen it on TV, you can see there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of undulation. There's a lot of tricky things that if you don't know the course, you can get into a lot of trouble. And so these young ladies hired coaches, and the winner, who's a 17-year-old from Japan, she's amazing. She hired a local caddy. And so it made me think, you know what, in business, even though we all know entrepreneurs and small business owners are smart folks, if you don't know the terrain, if you have situations that come up that you might not be as ready to tackle, it's always nice to have a caddy on board. We tend to call those coaches and mentors in our profession. I know you've been the caddy to many. Tell me your thoughts about my hypothesis there.
I see three things from your story. Number one, you volunteered, so you had an objective view of what was going on. So hopefully we'll hear from Greg as to his ideas as how can leaders assess their own operations by having that objective view, and what insights can they get. And another thing is some people had professional coaches who knew the lay of the land, and others relied on family who didn't know the lay of the land. And so this applies to family business. if you
Yep.
want to grow your family business, it's a best practice to seek some professional external talent. So again, I'd like to hear Greg's perspective on best practices for family business to grow. And the
Well,
third,
oh, go. I'm sorry. You know, you had three. I'm sorry about that. It's a part three. Go ahead and hit that third one, Phil.
well, the third is when they're having their family members as their caddies, which is a really important role. The family member is probably there more for emotional support than professional support that caddy, and so it's always important to make sure your coach fits the role. And again, looking forward to hearing what Dr. Greg has to say on all these things.
Well, Greg, I got we've teed you up. Golf pun intended. We've teed you up for this. First of all, welcome to the show. I'm just gonna throw it out there. You obviously hear the whole caddy coach thing. Talk a little bit about your thoughts about that and what you do specifically to play caddy for many of your clients. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, Phil. And I love the analogy of the coach and the caddy. It makes total sense. I see my work with leaders and teams is kind of being. I use the word Sherpa sometimes. That I am the change Sherpa. And caddy works beautifully. That my job is to help these folks who have decisions to make about how to transform their organization, how to transform their team, how to help an individual to grow themselves, so that they can make the transition from being pretty good leaders and teams to being even better leaders and teams. And so I help them explore, well, what are the objectives? What are you trying to do? Okay, well, what are your options, right? Just like, okay, let's look at this hole. What's the layout, and which club would be the best club here, and how big of a swing are you going to take? So your analogy fits beautifully, because that's what we're doing as coaches, because I'm not the one holding the club. They're the one who is in charge of making that play, and they're going to own the results. So what can I do as a caddy or a Sherpa or a coach to help them make the best decision possible in those real-time, usually stressful situations? That there's a lot riding on the choices that many senior leaders have, and so want to help them to not just race from A to B, but to actually slow down, take a breath, and think about what's the best way to go.
So why do we as humans get ourselves into these stressful situations?
How long do we have? We're wired, it seems, to make things more difficult than they need to be. That's one thing. I think that too is, we become our habits. And so we spend a lot of time on autopilot. There's some studies that, say that 95% of our decision making happens in our subconscious before we even consciously come to the decision. So there's so much that's going on in our brain so quickly all of the time, that when we're making these decisions on automatic, it's probably not the best choice. And so just developing a capacity to slow down our thinking just a little bit. I don't mean like endless, but just a few seconds, even, to short circuit our habit for just really too rapid decision making. And what happens then is that our emotions are driving our decision making rather than our executive function.
And so in addition to slowing down our thinking, let's go back to autopilot. Do people actually spend enough time thinking critically about the important things in their day or life, or are they just defaulting to habit and going from A to B?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And that's I mentioned that in my new book, where I talk about we become kind of very comfortable in our normal. That we wake up in the morning and we have a routine, and we go through our day and we have a routine, and we have a comfort zone that we live in, and we forget after a while that we are in an environment that we have created, and we just kind of exist in it. And so my job as a coach, when folks engage with me, is they have made a determination that they want to disrupt their normal, for their organization or for their team or for them, and especially for themselves. And that begins with the decision to do that, right? And say, I'm going to go on. I'm going to start to try to become more aware of why I do what I do the way that I do it, and does it still work for me, right? That's the thing that, for all of us, is that we have a way of doing things, and the reason why we behave at all, all behavior has meaning. So we behave in a certain way because at some point it worked for us. And the problem for a lot of leaders is that they're still doing things that they worked at some point, but they've become counterproductive. Some of the behaviors have become counterproductive, and it takes somebody, handing you a club saying, yeah, no, you don't want to hit it that way. You want to hit it this way from now on, because that worked on the last hole. That's not going to work on this hole. You need a different approach now to move forward, because this is a whole new hole, right? And helping people to get to that point is it's my privilege to be able to do that with folks. And that's the whole point of the work.
It's interesting as you're talking, because I had written down all behavior has meaning when I saw one of the videos on your website, and I realized I was just doing some thinking as you were talking there from a coaching perspective, and I'm going to use athletic coaching. Doesn't matter if it's golf, if it's basketball, what it is. I found that coaches tend to be tend to take on the coaches that they had before, to take on that, because this is how I was coached. When you have business owners, they likely at some point, somewhere along the line, had a boss. Mm-hmm. Could have been a family member, right? It could have been a part of a family business, or they could have just been getting out of college or whatever. They had bosses before in many cases. And they've been in a sense indoctrinated by those coaches, and they say, well, I turned out okay, and this is how I learned. And it could be the old command and control that I grew up with, and that probably Phil and you did as well, which probably doesn't work as much anymore. How do you find that transition from saying, yeah, this is how you came up through it, but it might not work that well? Kind of, as I said, it might not work that well anymore. How does that tend to go in your work?
Yeah, that's it's a great way of putting it. It's like, so those of us who, grew up a long time ago, there was a different parenting style when I was a kid. Right. And I wouldn't parent my kids the way that my parents, parented me, because, I'm not going to hit my kids. So it's like, well, it was fine, right? It worked for me. No, but come on. And so when I tell leaders that, our organization, we've always been command and control, and my first manager, he didn't take anything from anybody. And yeah, but at the end of the day, we're trying to create value for our customers, and we're trying to run our business in an effective way. And if the way that I'm engaging as a manager and as a leader is making it harder for people to engage and contribute and give their best, then I've got to look at my style and my methodology. That my job is to help people engage and contribute to our shared goals, shape their work, and achieve their best. And so if my behavior is whittling away at somebody's enthusiasm for engaging, then that's on me as a leader. I want everybody as engaged as possible. And if I've got people, because I'm just telling them what to do all the time, which is disempowering. You didn't hire me to tell me what to do, because I know what to do. So helping leaders to that realization of, yeah, I know you learned it that way and it worked back then, but it's not 1980 anymore or 1990 anymore. It's like, I
Right.
mean, Mad Men is a TV show. It's not
Right.
reality, right? So helping them to, yeah, but that was then, this is now. What does this organization and this team need from you? Right? You're here to serve this team and make this team better. Are you doing that by just wagging your finger and yelling or telling them what to do all the time?
Well, there is one thing that we do have to do on a normal basis, and that is pay the bills. We're going to take a short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Dr. Greg Giuliano, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out how to practice leadership. Don't walk away. We'll be back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And I am playing producer again today, so I'm going to do the commercial ad read. Here we go. Would you like to grow your business, increase revenues, and raise profits? You're probably all saying, of course. Would more financing from your banker help you grow? Probably. Who's guiding your succession plan? Would you like more control over your business so you sleep better at night? SME Business Wealth Builder works with business leaders and owners like you to help them grow their business and build their business wealth. For more information and to check out free resources, go to SMEwealthbuilder.com.
All right, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Phil Simchich, and our guest today is Greg Giuliano for our next segment, Hot or Not.
So, Greg, I know that you've listened or at least gotten a little bit of our podcast before. This is where Phil and I pepper you with questions about business, about life, about leadership. We may even get into some trail running. Who knows? You're going to tell us if the concept is hot or not, and then why or why not. Did a little digging in your website, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'll let you do it. Hot or not, Greg, practicing leadership.
Hot. It's always hot, right? The only way I get better is by practicing. So leadership is
and I knew it was going to be blazing, walking on the sun hot. But when I say the words practicing leadership, and here's what I want to hear from you, what does that mean? I know how to practice my golf game. I understand the concept and the methods of doing that. Practicing leadership seems a little bit more vague. Can you clear that up?
Well, sure. Think about it. So leadership is a mindset and a skill set. And so I need to be practicing that all the time. So am I open to working with other people? Am I getting better at aligning people and communicating to align people? Am I getting better at building my own capacity? So am I on a development journey? And am I getting better? Am I spending time trying to help other people get better, building the bench strength of my team? Am I getting better at coordinating all of the activity with my team, right? Keeping all of the plates spinning that need to be spinning. So leadership in that regard is a practice, and there's a whole mindset and skill set that I need to be working on a regular basis. That's part of the journey. So I see leadership and leadership development as a lifelong journey and a daily practice that I've got to keep working on getting better.
So for some leaders that have been going to the gym and doing the same program for years or decades, how can they get into a new routine, a new mindset, a new skill set? What needs to trigger them, or ideally, how can they trigger themselves internally?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, how do we, trigger ourselves, and how do we decide, I need to get up off the couch and start running a little bit, right? It's different for everybody. That there's some event, some catalyst for I need to make a change. Hopefully it's not, something disastrous happens, that they make a bad call, with their business, or they treat somebody really badly on their team, that it's just, I'm really spending a lot of energy, trying to get this team, engaged and working well together. And I think I could probably do this in a way that is a little bit more effective and expend a little less energy. I'm not getting the same results that I used to get with my last team or, somewhere earlier in my career. And they make a decision, something's got to change. And they decide that they're going to take a look, right? They pick up the mirror and they look at it and go, okay, it's got to be me. What's going on with me? What do I need to adjust at this point?
So, what's interesting is you're talking, I'm even in small businesses, there are layers of leadership. You have leaders, you have the leadership team, maybe you have managers, you have different supervisors. There are different levels of leadership, and each one is a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about the filtering down of a vision, of a mission of an organization, of a communication style around leading people? And what are some of the hazards that can come up when there are those different levels, and how do you fix them?
I mean, that's about one of the practices is creating alignment that connects the dots for folks at all those different levels, right? So, how do I, whether it's, 2 levels, 3 levels, that I could, in my mind, if I'm leading a team, I'm pretty clear on the vision, what we want to achieve, where I see the business in a couple of years, and the mission. What's the work that I need to do or we need to do in order to move us from where we are today to there? But how am I communicating that to the people around me? So if that's one level, do they get it, right? If I don't know what people think I said until I ask them what they heard. So I need to ask people what they hear when I talk about the vision and the mission. And what I find in organizations, no matter the size, is that every level is a little less clear as you move out and down in an organization. So the CEO is very clear on the vision and mission. Could repeat it, it's on automatic. But you move a couple of people, the farther you move away, the more people are. It's like a game of telephone, right? It's like the folks don't get it as much. So that part of that practice is how do we connect the dots for people and make sure all the time that people are aligned when they're making decisions about how to allocate the organization's time, energy, and resources. Is it aligned with that vision and that mission? And that's my job as a leader, is to make sure that the decisions that people are making are as aligned as possible with those highest intent type messages.
This is a different kind of communicating, and this is the toughest situation I've encountered as a coach, is a leader losing their cool, hot or not.
It should never. What's going on, unless you're putting out fires or doing brain surgery. Nothing's that big of a deal that you should be losing your cool. I tell you, I almost never encounter that anymore. I had one person about a year ago say, yeah, my boss yelled in a meeting, and I said, what year is it at your company? Who does that anymore? So hopefully that's a not. That's a not hot. There's no yelling. There's no yelling at work.
So let me. I'm gonna go by the one I was gonna ask, because I've certainly, I think everybody would agree to that. My question though really is, a lot of times that behavior is not about what happened. There's something deeper going on. And as we look back over what's happened over the last 2 years with COVID and a lot of the stresses and things that might be happening in personal lives, I think when we see some of that happening, it might be something else that has done that. When you see, and I'm sure you've run into that, when you've seen behaviors that may be abnormal or different or kind of coming out of the blue, how do you take care of that when you know that it might be something else that's underlying?
Yeah, and those are hard situations. So if it happens in a group setting, try to as quickly as possible, how do we minimize the disruption, and then after the fact in private with the person or with the leader who's the leader of the team that person is on, explore that. What's going on there? What just happened there? That doesn't seem like it's, I've never seen that from you before. What's going on? So there's a way to address something like that it is appropriate for the person, and it doesn't happen in that public setting. So I try to move as quickly as possible past that, try to contain it, and then revisit it with the person in private, because no one in the room has any responsibility or right for us to dig through that in public.
So many people were wound a little tight from the last couple of years. How can we unwind? Trail running, for example, hot or not?
Oh, hot. It's always hot. It's hot out today, so I'm not running today because it's way too hot here today. But yeah, we all need something, right? So one of the workshops that my team delivers from time to time with our clients is around resilience, and how do we help people stay energized and fully charged in order to be really present to their employees and to their customers, because it takes a lot of energy. So how are they recharging their batteries? So we all need some kind of a practice to stay physically charged and emotionally charged and energized, spiritually charged and energized, mentally charged and energized. So I'm always curious with people, what do you do to recharge your batteries? Because it seems like, so if somebody is like, as Dan, going back to Dan's question, if somebody, has some kind of a blip in their behavior, it's probably because their batteries are a little bit low, and they're not showing up, at their best.
So I want to make sure before we hit our commercial break that we talk about your next book, called The Next Normal. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it behind him. Tell us a little bit about the book. You've written others. Why this book? Why now? And help the listeners get a feel for what they can get.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this book's been out since late May, and we've hit #1 on Amazon in a number of categories. So we're really happy with the way the book has been received. I think I wrote this, so I know I wrote this book, is that, like I said, we all get used to being in a normal, and the experiences that we've all shared in the past couple of years are a big indicator that we're not going back to the way things were in our organizations, no matter what the size of they were. So people are using the term the new normal a lot. And my thinking is that, well, the new normal is just the next normal. That my job as a leader is to always be shaping the future and thinking about what is the next normal that I want to create with my organization and my team and each individual in my organization. And so the book walks leaders through that journey of how do you shape the future for yourself and create your own next normal, and not just be comfortable with your status quo, and how do you shape a next normal with your team and create more alignment with your team and build the bench strength with your team, and how do you do that at an organizational level? And so that's the whole premise of the book. There's 20 plus years of thinking in there and really I was inspired with this book by our friend and probably everybody's coaching mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, where a couple of years ago, he just started giving everything away. It's like, oh, here's how I do it. And so in this book, this is 20 years of, this is how I do it. This is how I, run my own company. This is how I coach leaders. This is how I work with teams. And so if you're looking for a recipe book, this is a recipe book because it's not just ideas about leadership, it's highly actionable. There's tools in it for growing yourself as a leader. There's tools in it for aligning a team. There's tools in it for shaping the culture of a team. There's tools in it for leading organizational change. So it's a recipe book. So I thank you for asking. Really proud of the book. It's going really well, and I hope everybody picks up a copy.
And Greg are going to find out. You're going to tell them how to do that at the end of our show. But we have another segment to go. We're going to recharge our batteries. At least you two are. I'm going to keep going. I guess I'm the Energizer Bunny. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Greg Giuliano, for our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to find out what Greg says employees should be saying about their bosses. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our excellent corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, the Kitsap Sun Newspaper Group, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Thank you to all of them. Please visit our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
All right, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Phil Simchich, and our guest today is Greg Giuliano for our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
So we're going to turn up the heat a little bit. Pleading the Fifth has been more common in our world here lately. And I think so people should know what Plead the Fifth now means. You get a chance to do that, but you can only do it once. So plead carefully. My guess is you're not going to be doing any fair catches. So my first question is Plead the Fifth, Greg. What kind of words should an employee be using to categorize their boss? If somebody were to say, tell me about your boss, what are they like? Give me some words, some adjectives. What should they be saying?
Empathetic, authentic, empowering. Those are the big three for me. I love those are the words that I listen for.
So I want to bring what you were talking about earlier and confirm that in these times of inflation, interest rates increasing, supply chain disruptions, constant threat of cyber attacks, political and all sorts of interesting economic and geopolitical issues, that are you saying that leaders should be proactive and create their own future instead of playing defense and reacting to the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a both and, right, Phil? I mean, there are things that are happening in the world and in the market that are beyond my control as a leader. What is in my control is how I design my organization, my company, in order to weather what may come. That I consider a best case scenario, that everything's going to be awesome and it's going to be easy for my organization. And I anticipating, what if there's a downturn, or what if the inflation goes, what if we turn into Argentina, right? So in terms of inflation, so I have to, as a leader, be shaping the future in that I am building an organization that can navigate change that may happen that I have no control over, that we have no control over, but that we have the capacity as quickly as possible to adapt and adjust in order to survive whatever kind of environment we find ourselves in.
Greg, you are a great caddy and an expert for these leaders. But you probably know as well as anybody, it's been said we can be our own worst critics. Plead the Fifth. Share with us something that you struggle with.
Again, how much time do we have? One of the things that I struggle with is I get a little. Well, here it is. Mine was attention management, which impacts time management. That I love learning. I love iterating, and it can get to the point where I drive my team crazy because there's never, this is the can of corn that we have to sell to our clients. It's always, oh, we could iterate that. Oh, we can make that better. We can do, and so, there's always a version with me. And so sometimes I get in the way of myself with that, that desire to iterate can negatively impact the team around me, that they're not ready to iterate, that this is going just fine and I'm being very successful with this right now, and please don't iterate again. And it also impacts that I can do that at the very last minute. And I've gotten feedback from my team is the night before we're going to deliver something, you can't change a whole bunch of what we're going to deliver. It's when it was just me, I could do that. But when it's a team of people, I've gotten the feedback, you can't do that anymore. And so I don't, by the way, I don't do that anymore.
But it's not easy.
Me.
It's not easy to make those changes, though. Easy even for ourselves. That's a hard thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I want to keep tweaking it, and no, it's good. Well, if we need it, we'll let you know.
That reminds me of Marshall Goldsmith's advice, whom you mentioned earlier, and I think it's out of his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, that a manager or leader or boss's 5% improvement to something is more than likely going to cause a 50% decrease in enthusiasm,
right,
by the others for what they're doing.
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so, what's the best book of any genre you've read, and why?
So there's two books that I love and I find myself telling people about all the time. One is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I just love his writing, and so especially when I was younger, or when I would talk to younger people trying to figure out their path in life. That's a great book, and it's just a beautiful story. I find that one of the books that I give to people the most is Marshall's book you just mentioned, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It is just, it's a shot between the eyes that we all have habits that hold us back, and it's a great wake up call and reminder that we got to keep moving forward on the journey.
So one of my favorite questions to ask during this, Greg, is Plead the Fifth. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be, and what are you eating?
Can I pick three people? I'll pick three people. I'll pick my grandmother and my parents.
Iterate, Greg. I'm
going to iterate.
I'm going to allow you to iterate the question.
I'm going to answer your question. My mom and dad and my grandmother, just because my grandmother's, and we would have my grandmother's ravioli, homemade, that I remember as a kid, going to her house for Sunday dinner, 30 some of us every Sunday for as long as I can remember. And that aroma still with me, and just to, sit and have dinner with them again would be lovely.
All right, I'm going to ask you, Craig. I'm assuming they've all passed. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So somebody else had answered a very similar way. They would talk to their father, can't remember. What would you ask? Now, is there something that you would ask about their lives that you wish you would have asked then? I'm curious, because I think it's a great answer, and I know that both my parents have passed, and if I had that opportunity, I have lots of questions. What about you?
Yeah. I lost my dad when I was 17, and so it's been a long time since I've had since he's been around. But I've spent all these years since having a conversation with him and imagining, how he would, look at things. And probably my question to him would be, what would be his message to his 17-year-old self? knowing, that would, if there was a mistake that he was making when he was younger, or something that he could have done to help himself make a better choice, or, avoid something when he was younger, what would it be? Just to hear how he would mentor his younger self. That you've touched on something with me, Dan. It's an ongoing conversation. So this is the flag that was draped on my dad's coffin when he passed. So he's with me every day.
And so, what would your parents or grandmother be proudest of you for achieving now? Up to this point?
I think that they'd be proud of me for the same things that I'm the proudest of, is that one is my long-term relationship with my wife, and the other is our two awesome kids, 31 and 28 now. And they would, I think I've done a pretty good job at holding being a family. I hope that I know that they would be proud about that.
Awesome. Okay, so I am getting up to speed here. Okay. Greg, thanks so much for being our guest here on the Shrimp Tank. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you and learn more about your company and your new book, Next Normal, right? How can they get more information?
Well, they can find me at greggiuliano.com. And there's all of the information is there. The book is available on Amazon in a different bunch of different versions. The audio book is coming out in a week or so. So hopefully that the folks will find that as well if they want. If they go to the website, greggiuliano.com, and they sign up for our newsletter, we send a newsletter out to folks once a month, and it's always got something free, a free resource attached to it. But when they sign up for that newsletter right now, we send them a PDF that is full of self-development and team development tools, the tools that I use when I'm working with teams. And so we're giving it away.
Awesome. Everyone, make sure you check out all replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and wherever you get your podcasts, such as iHeart, Apple, or Google, or Spotify. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Greg, thank you very much for having been on the show today. Next time I'm in the Portland area, which hopefully will be soon, we'll look you up and get together, and maybe we'll just go out for some ravioli or lasagna or something. That'll be fun. Phil, great to see you again. We'll look forward to seeing you next month. Our next show, everybody, will be Wednesday, August 24th. So please do what Phil said. Like us on Facebook, like us on our social media. Come watch us live stream. Our guest will be Christine Rose. We are looking forward to that conversation. My co-host that week will be Linda Popke. In the meantime, please be safe, be well, and be prosperous. Because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond, and the